Hey everyone, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records, episode number 34, I think, but who's counting? And today we are going to do something fun. We are going to do a guide to Parliament Funkadelic, and we are going to primarily be focusing on the core catalog, the 21 albums that they made between 1970 and 1981. But because this is Rich Talks Records, I will be touching upon a number of other things as well. I should say I have actually started 3 other videos, and that are in various stages of progress, but none were ready yet, and I really wanted to get another one out for some of the newcomers, and there are a number of you. Welcome, hello, and I will get to Pill in 1980 and 1981 eventually. I promise. Stick with me. But I had to get out of Pill world for a little bit because those videos were demanding, and we all have busy lives. So at any rate, this is going to hopefully be a mostly one take, and more importantly, no notes video. I haven't spent weeks studying this one. I know the PFunk catalog fairly well. I guess I will touch upon I'll touch upon 2 things. We're going to do the core albums. I'm just going to give an overview. I don't know. I was going to treat this like the Boredom's beginner's guide, but when I thought about P-Funk and I thought about their phases, I thought it would be more interesting to just give, and that it's roughly a decade, I thought it would be more interesting to just simply give the overview of the core catalog, and then you could kind of decide for yourself how much you want to pursue. And I won't really be getting into too much of the side bands, so there's going to be no Bootsy's Rubber Band, no Parlette, no Brides of Funkenstein. I will be touching on some of the post P-Funk albums in the 80s and in the 90s and beyond, and some of George Clinton's solo career stuff. So really, this is just to provide kind of a thumbnail overview and ideally cover a lot of albums in a short amount of time. Eventually, I will do, somewhere down the line, I will do detailed reviews, Rich Talks Records style reviews of these albums. But I don't see the P-Funk body of work talked about enough as a proper body of work, the same way that you get, the same way that people talk about the Beatles or Bowie or maybe even something like Joy Division, like where it's these sort of sacrosanct bodies of work. I think that P-Funk functions largely on the same level, and I just wanted to, since I haven't really seen anybody else talk about it that way, I figure I might as well do it. So I will also touch upon, I guess, my little history with Parliament Funkadelic. I'm going to go out on a limb and make a little sweeping sociological statement. I want to say that they were largely unknown to white America, I'm going to say. I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in a conservative household. There were two black kids in my middle school. That was it. And one of them only really listened to Paul McCartney. So there wasn't, like, we knew like James Brown or Sly Stone, but P-Funk was kind of an unknown entity. George Clinton, I really only had a sense of George Clinton. He did a Burger King commercial, and he did the opening credits for the Tracy Ullman. He did the theme song for the Tracy Ullman show, and that was I didn't know that he was any different. Getting into the later 80s, early 90s, when I was getting into music, I didn't know that he was, first of all, I didn't know that he had anything to do with this thing called P-Funk. Second of all, and I also didn't know that P-Funk had anything to do with Parliament or Funkadelic. That's how kind of dumb and disparate all of this was for me. But also, I didn't know that he was different than Sun Ra. Like the multicolored hairdo and everything. Like, I just thought he was sort of like this eccentric guy, and I didn't really understand the brief little bits of music that I heard from him. The first time I ever heard of Parliament, this is pretty funny, was in an interview, it would have been in Metal Edge magazine, with Brent Muscat, the guitarist of Faster Pussycat, an early favorite. Of the hair metal bands, I like Faster Pussycat was, other than, I guess, Motley Crue, I had a weird affection for Faster Pussycat. And those are some of the only hair metal albums that I've kept. I still have the original cassettes I would have gotten when I was like 11, 12 years old. But he mentioned Parliament, and I thought, wow, what a wild name for a band, Parliament. And I assumed it, because Parliament, I assumed it was like some like English new wave of British heavy metal band or something. I envisioned them sounding like Saxon or Diamond Head or something. One day I was at a Sam Goody buying cassettes, and god damn it, there was the and I'll find it and throw the photo up, Rich, of the Parliament Uncut Funk compilation, the one with the red cover that, again, I feel like I saw 10,000 times in record stores back in the 90s. And I actually had it in my hand, and I was going to purchase it. And I forget why I didn't. I've tried to remember what I bought that day instead. I put it down, and I want to say I bought Iron Maiden's Power Slave instead. But I have, for many years now, I have reflected on what I would have thought, what would have happened if I came home with that cassette. What would I have made out of it? I've often wondered. But at that time, though, there was stuff like Living Color, 24/7 Spies, Fishbone, and then My Beloved Jane's Addiction, etc., etc. And so there was, and I already like Jimi Hendrix, so part of me thinks I might not have been thrown that much by it, but I didn't really have any frame of reference for them, and I didn't really understand that Parliament and Funkadelic were two halves of the same coin, and it really wasn't until I started getting more seriously into rap music a couple years later, and the big breakthrough was when, and I'll be touching upon this later, was when the Tear the Roof Off compilation came out, which I would have gotten in 1993, and that was a revelation. So it was kind of a weird. I had just sort of I knew that there was, again, 24/7 Spies. I knew that the guitar player Jimmy Hazel. I knew who Eddie Hazel was because I had read an interview with him and he talked about them. But again, I had very little frame of reference for a lot of this music, and so that I started with the Tear the Roof Off compilation. I had a really good friend who already had, I think, Uncle Jam Wants You and One Nation Under a Groove, and it just kind of went from there. So that's kind of my history. Once I was in, I was all the way in, and I have been a fan ever since. So let us get into the core catalog, shall we? This I would have purchased at the same record store where I got my John Lennon bootlegs, and where I frequented as a teen. This, I didn't really understand this album for a very, very long time. It turns out that it was, I guess it was mostly recorded. George Clinton was a staff songwriter for Motown, and also had his doo-wop group, The Parliaments. Like Lou Reed, George Clinton goes back to doo-wop. He's actually a 50s guy. He's been around that long. Hard to believe. National treasure. So this is I have all of so this is mid-2000s, 2005. I have all of the CD reissues. It helpfully tells you it's the first CD right here. And these have a wealth of, all of these have a wealth of bonus material on them. And a lot of that is really worth checking out. But this was mostly done, I guess, by Motown session guys on their off hours. So they were recording Jackson 5 tracks by day and recording this in bits and pieces by night, is my understanding. This is absolutely a masterpiece. I don't know that I would recommend that it's like the first album you check out. But if you like psychedelic music and you like, if you're into, not that they are necessarily heavy, but it's not that big of a jump from, let's say, the first Black Sabbath album to this. But it's a masterpiece. Every single song on it is incredible. It's all of a piece. And my favorite song on here would be I'll Bet You. But again, amazing bonus tracks. If you're gonna track this down, try and check out the version with all the supplements. Their next album from 1970. This was recorded over 1 or 2 days, whatever it was. I've held this one up before. It's the second album, Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow. One of the greatest albums ever made, an absolute masterpiece. If you like freaky 60s music, if you like, it is the soul or funk equivalent of White Light, White Heat by the Velvet Underground. It's an absolute masterpiece. It is a true phantasmagoria album. It's not probably for everyone. It's feedback drenched and echoey and dark and weird. And it's probably not for everybody, but it's an absolute masterpiece, and it's a very serious, very incredible album. And the bonus tracks on here, oh yeah, Fish, Chips, and Sweat. Yeah, this, like, not a lot in terms of bonus tracks, but really, really, really good. And then we get into the first Parliament album. This album has come out many, many, many times over the years. The version that appears to now just be on YouTube, unfortunately, was the mid-90s, I want to say, version known as Rhenium, but it was originally put out in 1970 as Osmium, and this is one version of it that I have, and I would recommend. This is this was the Invictus reissue. I would recommend this version. If you're going to track it down, go with this version, because this has bonus tracks that are absolutely phenomenal. Hopefully you can read that. The bonus tracks, this is some of their wildest, most liquid psychedelic music. This album is basically a less heavy, slightly less freaky version of Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow, but it is an incredible companion piece. I don't know that I would call it necessarily a masterpiece, but it is a phenomenal album nonetheless, but maybe just slightly under masterpiece level. So those are the albums from 1970. Moving on to 1971, an album I do not have on vinyl. The album that is kind of their acknowledged masterpiece, and the one that people cover songs from, Maggot Brain. If there are two sort of acknowledged P-Funk masterpieces, this and One Nation Under a Groove. Some people also include Parliament's Mothership Connection. I will say, I think that all the three masterpieces that people go on about and that all the critics agree on, and people say, here, check this one out. This is probably, like the two others, they are all the most user-friendly. They are all the most approachable, but I also feel that they are overrated in that the overrating tends to come at the expense of evaluating and appreciating the rest of the albums. There is a weird thing that people tend to do with P-Funk, which is get these albums and you don't really need to bother with the rest. I say, yes, you do. Again, like Bowie, Zeppelin, Beatles, etc., it's about it's about the full catalog. It's about the larger story being told. So, but that being said, lots of incredible music on here. The title track obviously is very iconic. Hit It and Quit It. Super Stupid is sort of the most heavy of the earlier rock songs. And this, it really is like the sort of post-Hendrix guitar-heavy freak out. I mean, Eddie Hazel is the main thing that you're hearing and was a phenomenal genius guitar player. The next development of what Jimi Hendrix was doing. Maybe not a Hendrix level genius necessarily, because I think Hendrix is kind of among 3 or 4 people at that genius level as far as people making music in the 20th century. But that's no slight on Eddie Hazel. He was a phenomenal musician. Then in 1972, recorded in London. I've touched upon this album before. It is the expansive double album, America Eats Its Young. And I absolutely love this album. Some people will tell you that it is not a great album. There are things that are a little wonky on here, specifically the I guess, response to feminism, We Hurt Too, which has a very strange vocal performance. But most of this album, I think is absolutely incredible. I've never been able to cut this down into a single album. I think you need the expanse. It is filled out with psychedelic rock versions of some of the old Parliaments songs, and those will get revisited more as well. But I love what they do with them on here. Especially That Was My Girl. Like, this whole album is absolutely incredible. And here's the CD version of it. And this has the original poster. Someday when I review this, I'll pull out the poster and show it to you. Because it has, like, freaky process Church of the Final Judgment proclamations on it. Woo! So, then we get into 1973. Funkadelic had gone as wild and weird and freaky as they could. And George Clinton was trying to get them to cross over and have a hit single. So a lot of the strangeness was toned down, the freakouts were less freaky, and again, they were trying to become more approachable. This is also the first with the Pedro Bell artwork. And that is 1973's Cosmic Slop. And so this is the introduction of the legend that is Pedro Bell. Some of the greatest album artwork of all time. And I once had the pleasure of getting a very late night cab ride and the cab driver, it turns out, had in the 70s had been a close personal friend of Pedro Bell, and regaled me with some really funny stories about how eccentric and wild both him and all the P-Funk people were. This album is a great album, but we are now out of the psychedelic period, and we are now sort of into the middle period where they're trying to make nice and comb their hair and hold down a day job. I talked about this album kind of in line with like The Doors' Waiting for the Sun or Black Flag's Loose Nut. They're trying really hard to rein it in. That being said, some phenomenal songs on here. I mean, the March to the Witch's Castle is freaky and amazing. The title track, Cosmic Slop, is an all-time absolute masterpiece. Trash a Go-Go, like the whole, and No Compute, it's an amazing album, but qualitatively it is a bit of a step down, and it is not, as far as a beginning to end album statement, it is far lesser, and it's more about the strength of the individual songs. But, if you have more conventional tastes, you could totally start there. Released, I want to say 5 or 6 days apart. This is the second Parliament album, and probably the first proper Parliament album. This is where they carve out more of their own identity. This is Up for the Downstroke. Up for the Downstroke is often written about as they're getting their act together, and it's pretty good. I say fuck that nonsense. This is a masterpiece. Yes, I am proclaiming this 1974 album to be a masterpiece, yes. And every single song on here is basically perfect. Presence of a Brain is one of their most idiosyncratic, glorious songs. The Goose, which is an updated Parliament song, is an expansive psychedelic masterpiece with incredible Eddie Hazel guitar stuff. It's absolutely perfect. The title track is one of their most sublime songs ever. And say hi to everybody, cute girl. Yeah, she hasn't been in a video in a long time. Yeah, that's right. Hi. She clearly wants to get down. All right, goodbye. So anyway, and yeah, and I just got back from the Fantasy Ahead of Our Time and the Four Lands of Alette. Amazing. This whole thing is amazing. It's a psychedelic pop R&B masterpiece that ties together all of these elements. And speaking of Parliament songs, it has Testify. So, which was the Parliament's original hit, released a few days later. Speaking of Eddie Hazel, we have Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. This album, I would say, is a near masterpiece. It's ridiculously listenable. I like it as a whole album better than Cosmic Slop. Red Hot Mama, Alice in My Fantasies are two of their most hard-rocking and awesome songs. I'll Stay is another beautiful, kind of like The Goose, another dark, slinky, sexy, late-night, freaky, weird song. Kind of also like No Compute. The next chapter of No Compute, in some ways, Jimmy's got a little bit of bitch in him, is also really funny. Title track's amazing, but it ends with the, 10 or 14 minutes, I forget, psychedelic sprawl of good thoughts, bad thoughts, some of the greatest playing of Eddie Hazel's life. This is the CD. This is an earlier CD reissue with no bonus material. It is phenomenal. And then it has George Clinton's philosophical musings that are some of the greatest lyrics ever written, and lyrics that I have quoted infinitely to myself in life, to people if they are in a tough spot in life, and that I have discussed the ideas of that very deeply at various times in therapy. So Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts, a phenomenal, visionary epic way of ending the album. Moving along to 1975, we have the next Parliament album, Chocolate City. Chocolate City, ostensibly, I wish that this is the CD version. This, I wish, is something of a concept album. I wish that, Light Marks, I wish that they had just gone full on and just made it a concept album. It is a lot less dense than Up for the Downstroke, a lot less eccentric. But that being said, there are a lot of incredible songs on here. However, I will say that it's kind of like a lateral move over from Cosmic Slop, and it's more about the strength of certain individual songs as opposed to the entire album experience. That being said, title track, like Ride On, like a lot of it is absolutely incredible. And the bonus tracks, Common Law Wife, is really great. So if you can find that, go for it. Then we get an album that I didn't buy for a long time because I wanted to get all the studio albums, and I could never find all the studio albums. And I thought this was a live album, so like an idiot, this might have been the last album I ever got by them. And that is 1975's Let's Take It to the Stage. And again, kind of like Chocolate City, kind of like Cosmic Slop. It's another album that's a little bit more about its individual songs than it is an album on the whole. That being said, I do think it hangs together better as a whole album than either of those, partially because this album is not so much a concept album, it is an attitude album, and it is one of the great attitude albums of all time. It's a weird attitude, and it's a multi-dimensional attitude, but the sublime songs, especially Better by the Pound and Be My Beach, and the title track, Good to Your Earhole, amazing. So The good stuff on here is some of the best. However, the remake of Baby I Owe You Something Good is one of my least favorite things they've ever done. And the 7-minute album closer, Atmosphere, is a little bit of a toss-off, I'll just be honest. So, could have been a masterpiece, but again, the best songs are some of the very best. Now, this is also from 1975, I think December 1975. This is kind of the big breakthrough. This is Mothership Connection. A lot of people hold this up as a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. How could it not be? We have PFunk Wants to Get Funked Up, Mothership Connection, Unfunky UFO is absolutely incredible. Give Up the Funk, Night of the Thumposaurus Peoples. I mean, this is a really, really, really tremendous album. And back cover is incredible. Like, amazing. And this is when they made the jump over. Well, they already had made the jump over to Casablanca Records, but this is, I feel like, this is where also the weird crossover with Kiss and the weird, like, similarities in album cover art and stuff with Kiss really kicks in around this time. But yeah, amazing album. It is a masterpiece. I just think, like I said, I think that sometimes people have a strange tendency to act like that's the one Parliament album that you need, and I would strongly disagree with that assertion. Coming hot on its heels in 1976, we have the Clones of Dr. Funkenstein. This album, I think, is severely underrated and has a lot of amazing material on it. Game It On Ya is amazing. The quasi title track, Dr. Funkenstein. Children of Productions is one of the greatest songs that they ever did. Do That Stuff, I've Been Watching You, and Funkin' for Fun. The only thing on here that I don't really care for is the Everything Is on the One, which just is very underdeveloped, especially when considering how ridiculously exceptional the rest of this album is. And it is. Funkadelic, I think, around this time was kind of, they were getting off of Westbound Records, and I think that they had a little bit of an identity crisis. They were recording 2 albums concurrently, and we have this. This is the last album on Westbound, which is Tales of Kid Funkadelic. And it's sort of an outtakes album. It's a little half-cocked. The title track is, not really. It's basically a 13-minute sound collage of other stuff of theirs. Like, it's parts of it are phoned in, and I really wish that that they had just either just fully made an outtakes album or just shelved it or combined it with this. This is Cosmic Slop. This was the Priority Records version. This would have been the first studio album I found by Funkadelic Records. I bought it in a Best Buy. And this is missing. What's missing here in the pullout? What's missing is the merch. I bought and still have this t-shirt. So this was the mail-in form that I cut out. But this album opens with a funk rendition of Coming Around the Mountain, which is like one of my 2 or 3 favorite Funkadelic things ever recorded. And the rest of this album, I struggled to understand. Again, I struggled for years to understand it. It wasn't until, Jesus, like about 10 years later or so that this album really opened up and I realized just how genius it is. I don't know that I would necessarily put it in the masterpiece category. I would maybe put this right next to, like, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On as just under a masterpiece, but still really, really, really incredible. This, again, is very dark, very open-ended, very, very, very strange stuff, and a cosmic alien music, but absolutely incredible. And then, now you want to talk masterpieces? I thought I had this on... I know I have this on vinyl somewhere, but I apparently couldn't find my copy of it. This is 1977's Now You Want to Talk Masterpieces. Funkadelic versus the Placebo Syndrome. I have a tendency to misremember names, so for up until maybe just a few years ago, I always called this Funkadelic versus the Placebo System, which doesn't make a ton of sense. It has Bop Gun, it has Sir Nose, it has Wizard of Finance, it has Funkadelic, it has Placebo Syndrome, and it has Flashlight. That's every song on the record. All of them are perfect. It's one of the most perfect albums ever made. This is one of the ultimate masterpieces. When people go on and on about Mothership Connection, but they don't mention this, I am baffled and confused, because it's one of the most perfect, creative, ultimate albums of all time. So, there you have it. And now we get into One Nation Under a Groove. Is it a masterpiece? Sure. But again, I think that it tends... This is, again, the priority issue that I would have gotten back in the 90s. I think it's amazing. The title track is probably as, as it goes, their sort of ultimate statement. Who says a funk band can't play rock? I mean, there's a lot of amazing, amazing, amazing songs on here. Charlie is amazing. This also has the EP that came with it. So, is this them at their absolute peak? In some ways, yes. But, the Pro Enema, I've never really cared for that song that much, and it's long. So, I think, again, I think that people tend to overrate this at the expense of just how amazing some of the other albums are. But obviously, it's incredible, and you can't go wrong with it, and you certainly can't go wrong with the title track. Now, an album that is... Woo! This is them at their peak. I mean, if you want to say that they truly peaked in 1978, I mean, my goodness. We get into the Motor Booty Affair. This is like Funkadelic versus the Placebo Syndrome, an absolutely perfect album from start to finish. We also have Lloyd Overton's incredible artwork. Again, every single second of this thing is absolutely, utterly perfect. It ends with Deep, which could be, in a perfect world, this might have been their Abbey Road, their concluding statement. But my God, I mean, what can you say about it? It's completely perfect. If you've never heard it, do yourself a favor. Then we get into 1979's Uncle Jam Wants You. And this is probably... so we had... their psychedelic freakout phase, we had their middle period, we have kind of their ultimate peak years, and then this is, I guess, the beginning of the decline. And Uncle Jam Wants You, side one with Knee Deep, is, and Freak of the Week is amazing. Knee Deep is one of their most enduring songs and has been sampled 10,000 times. Side two, things get a little wonky, and this is the Charlie Records reissue I got from, I think it came out in England. I want to say Charlie is an English label. Kind of goes off the rails a little bit. I just don't think that it really works. There's a couple songs on there that I enjoy, but it's as a concept, it's the least, and it was probably the weakest album they had put out to date at that point. 1979 then also had Parliament's Glory Halla Stupid or Pin the Tail on the Funky. Now, this album is often considered one of the weakest that they ever made. I actually strongly, this belonged to Isma Rose. I disagree with that assertion. I think that more Lloyd Overton artwork. I think that this is, or is it Overton Lloyd? Oh, Jesus, I might have been saying his name backwards. Anyway, I think that this record is actually really underrated. In particular, the song The Freeze Sizzling Mean is an absolute fucking masterpiece. There are moments where things are slightly diffuse, or they do seem to be running a little thin. But again, I do think that this is a very underrated album, and there is again, kind of a darkness, a dark intensity to this album that I absolutely appreciate. So, underrated album. Then we get into, now if you want to say that this is part of the decline, you can do that. We get 1980s Trombipulation. And this album, it's not that it's a bad album, it's just that it's not terribly distinctive, and it doesn't really hang together all that well. The songs just sort of come and go without really making much of an impression. And I want to say that the single best thing on here, Let's Play House, which is the closest to one of their classic songs, was mined by the great Digital Underground for their classic, the Humpty Dance. So and dismiss Digital Underground at your own peril as a novelty act, because they were fucking awesome. So yeah, I think that this is only a weaker album by their own extremely lofty standards. I think that it's a solid album, a good album, but unremarkable in the greater scheme of things. And then we get the final, quote-unquote, final Funkadelic album, 1981's, it should have been a double album, The Electric Spanking of War Babies. This is the censored cover and this is the uncensored middle of what it should have looked like. And this album, I thought, oh God, when I first heard this album, and this is the uncensored CD, this is again the priority version, I thought, oh dear God, I'm so glad they broke up after this. They were totally running on fumes. What were they doing? Again, kind of like Hardcore Jollies, this album eventually started weirdly making sense to me. And the epic version of Funk Gets Stronger, again, started really, really, really making sense. And I started really getting deep into it and getting on this album's weird, angular, odd, sort of futuristic vibe. And I have come to really, really love this album for all of its absolute and complete strangeness. And if things really had ended here, ending it on Icka Prick is kind of perfect. A obnoxious, knees up, send off, to the world would have ended things perfectly for the Parliament Funkadelic saga. But of course, things didn't end there. So George Clinton's 80s solo albums basically continue the P-Funk saga and kind of function as P-Funk albums, ultimately. The first one is 1982's Computer Games, which contains, along with One Nation Under Groove, probably the single biggest song he ever had, and that's, of course, Atomic Dog. You might have heard it sampled somewhere before. But this album is again, an absolute masterpiece. It's incredible from start to finish. Absolutely unbelievable. I love this album. I love every single second of it. It's perfect. It's cosmic. It's beautiful. It's funny. It's smart. It's political. It's a masterpiece. From there, the 80s albums decline a little in quality with each time out. So we have 1983's You Shouldn't Have Bit Fish, which, if the last album is a masterpiece, this one is very, very good. But not, I don't know that I would put it at masterpiece level, but I certainly like it a lot. And from there, we get into the rest of the 80s. We have 1985's Some of My Best Friends Are Jokes, which has its moments. And then we have R&B Skeletons in the Closet, which also has its moments, but again, neither of those albums are sort of on his level. And then the 80s end with, what year was this? Was this 89? Yeah, 89. By this point, he signed to Princess Paisley Park Records, and this is the Cinderella Theory. There's a couple things on here that are really good. Chuck D and Flavor Flav make an appearance on it. But in a perfect world, the real follow-up to 1982's Computer Games would have been this gem, 1983's Urban Dance Floor Gorillas. This is another, I'm going to say, masterpiece. This is a start to finish. This plays like a funk version of like Draw the Line, or it's just one of those like sort of perfect albums that you just can play, and you can either pay attention to it or not pay attention to it, and it sounds perfect either way. I love this album. This is the CD reissue of it. And it is, again, it is just a start to finish amazing statement, a statement of interdependence, as George Clinton said. And that's sort of it for the 80s. And now we will get into some of the other categories of albums. For compilations, here is 1993's Tear the Roof Off. There are a lot of P-Funk compilations. This is still the best one as far as I'm concerned. It has the 12-inch version of Aqua Boogie and the 12-inch version of Bop Gun. So I think that bumps it into essential status. Really incredible. It also has Fantasy is Reality, the lone studio song from the 1977 P-Funk Live Earth Tour album, which I was pretty sure I had a copy of on vinyl and somehow haven't been able to locate for this video. So you can get that here. And this is still sort of out there in one form or another. I wouldn't waste time with other compilations. I would go to this one. Again, the obscurities make it essential. And P-Funk and Funkadelic, because of the split in the recording contracts, there are the Westbound years and then the Warner Brother years. Is it Warner Brother? I think it is. So this covers the Westbound years. This is just a roundup of all the singles. Most of these are covered by the bonus tracks on the CD reissues, but this is also a really, really good kind of one-stop shop for, and probably ultimately the best. This also came out in 93, so this is the Music for Your Mother compilation. So I would recommend that strongly. It's hard to believe that P-Funk had things on the cutting room floor, and yet they did. So this is Toys. This is from 2008. I didn't know that this existed until I found this in a record store in Minneapolis, and on a not a lot of fun trip to Minneapolis, but I found this, and so that was cool. It's interesting. There's some interesting stuff on here. I don't know how essential it is, but if you are into P-Funk, this is outtake stuff from the Westbound years, and certainly worth your attention. But what's really worth your attention is a 5-volume CD series, the Fifth of Funk. Is that what all of these were called? No, they weren't. I just call them that in my mind. But so this is the first one. These came out in the 90s. I didn't know these existed until the later 90s. So that's the first one. This is the second one. This is the third. This is the fourth. And this is the fifth. And these are all amazing. They have liner notes that are informative, but also audio recordings, like interview clips with George Clinton talking about some of these songs. And these are just outtakes and tracks from all of the vast sprawl of P-Funk related albums. And absolutely really interesting. If I had to go with a single moment off of any of these, I would go off of the fourth one, I Angle, which is a near 10-minute outtake from what would have been the double album version of Electric Spanking of War Babies. That is a huge compliment to the rest of that period and kind of the great missing Funkadelic song. But there's a lot of really wonderful material on these. These were very hard to find back in the old days. These were Amazon Marketplace purchases or eBay purchases. These were damn hard to locate. And now, of course, they're all on YouTube and you can just go listen to them very easily. But check out I Angle for an idea of just how great some of that stuff is. There is a vast amount of live P-Funk stuff. The two releases that I would suggest checking out, the earliest recorded show from 1971. This is a really fascinating show. It was put out by Westbound. It's from September of 71. This has a pickup drummer But it's still a really, really, really amazing show, and is just really interesting to hear live early Funkadelic. And then there's the P-Funk All-Stars live at the Beverly Theater. This concert is from 1983. This was released in 1990. I didn't get it until just a few years ago. This is the definitive live album to get. The P-Funk Live Earth Tour record is great, of course, obviously. And then there's the Live from Houston DVD, which I want to say is from 76. That's certainly worth checking out. Again, though, there's tons of stuff on YouTube. I mean, you can drown in all of it. But I would direct you to this live album. This is incredible. It's about as perfect as a live album gets. And if music lore is to be believed, this is the show that Prince attended, and upon leaving the show that night, went to the studio and in a fit of excitement recorded Erotic City and She's Always in My Hair. Pretty much all by himself, with some help, obviously, from Sheila E. George Clinton recorded a lot as George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. I don't have all of those albums. Some of them they tend to all be very, very long albums. So we have we have the awesome power of a fully operational mothership. It's okay. And then we have How Late Do You Have to Be Before You Are Absent? Again, I will be honest, I've never been able to get through this album all the way through. It's fine. None of these albums are bad. They are just all over the place. The one album, though, and the last time that to me George Clinton was like all capital letters fucking George Clinton, was 1995's Dope Dogs. I love this fucking album. Apparently there are a number of different versions of it. There was some unlicensed sampling, I guess, going on. So I got this on CD, but this is the version that I would have bought way back when. It might have actually come out in 95. So I was lucky enough to get this. This kind of reminds me almost of like the Jello Biafra albums with Lard, or the album he made with Mojo Nixon, the Prairie Home Invasion. These kind of strange, eccentric, sprawling sort of art project things that nonetheless are still really amazing. And actually more accurate statements of the time than some of the more sort of critically acclaimed albums. I absolutely love this album. Check this out. This is a motherfucker of an album. It's an incredibly impressive statement, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in George Clinton's later work. George Clinton, as I talked about before, started off in the late 50s doing doo-wop. This is something I would have gotten off eBay way back when. This is a collection of all of the extant Parliaments recordings. And Nancy, enjoy. Positive feedback left. Thanks. So somewhere on my extremely neglected eBay account, Nancy left me positive feedback. Thank you, Nancy. God bless. And so this is not some cheapo CDR. I mean, it is a CDR, but somebody actually bothered to actually print this. But this is a great compilation, and the Parliaments were a very good doo-wop group, and this has a number of songs that wound up getting recorded on proper P-Funk albums, including I Want to Testify, and Good Old Music, and The Goose, and That Was My Girl, and Let's Make It Last, All Your Goodies Are Gone. Baby, I Owe You Something Good. I'll wait. So really cool. Worth checking out. That's George, the R&B skeletons in the closet, indeed. So that's, if you are interested, certainly worth checking out. This is a reissue. This is Funkadelic with US or US Music, United Soul. So some of these songs are available on bonus tracks or on the Music for Your Mother compilation. The song, the original Baby I Owe You Something Good is on here. That is far better than the re-recorded version on Let's Take It to the Stage. But the absolute fucking classic of this is I Miss My Baby, an absolutely gorgeous sort of post-Motown early 70s soul song, just absolutely gorgeous. One of the most sublime things that any of them ever recorded. Amazing. Worth it for that song. Then there are the non-P-Funk albums. Ho ho ho. This is the woeful 1980 Funkadelic album with Grady Thomas and Calvin Simons and Fuzzy Haskins. This album does not include any performances or creations by George Clinton. Connections and disconnections. I have it so alternately released. It was called Connections and Disconnections, or Who's a Funkadelic. It's, I will generously say, competent at best. I'm not terribly interested in it. I've barely ever listened to it. It's fine for what it is. You might like it. George is, to borrow the Reggie Jackson phrase, George is the straw that stirs the drink. So, And then we have the would-be 80s Funkadelic comeback album by way of The Drum, which was released by Hippo Select. This would have been, the later 2000s? Yeah, 2007 is late enough for me. How about for you? And, I don't have a lot of nice things to say about this. I don't really care for this. It's barely an album. It's not an album. It barely sounds like Funkadelic. I'm not really sure what it sounds like. It's other than it was clearly recorded in the 1980s. I don't have really anything good to say about this at all. So moving on. There are, of course, the final Funkadelic album and the final Parliament album, one from 2014, one from 2018. Talk about long. We have the 3-disc First You Gotta Shake the Gate. Is there some good music on here? Yes. Why is it 3 discs? Why is it the longest goddamn thing ever made? It's 3 discs. It clearly doesn't need to be. It is stylistic. To say it is stylistically divergent doesn't even begin to state it accurately enough. I've really never been able to get through the whole thing all the way through. You listen to it in bits and bobs. It is what it is. It's interesting. I'm glad they made it. It was a very daring statement to make. And speaking of daring long statements, we have the 23-track epic Medicaid Fraud Dog, which is probably the best of the later stuff. It's interesting. I don't know that it's really necessarily a Parliament album. It is a concept album, and it sort of functions in some ways as a Parliament album, but it is so much its own thing, and it's so divergent with the rest of their material that, is it worth listening to? Yes. Do I respect it as a ambitious late period artistic statement? Absolutely. Is it a great album that you play start to finish? No, of course not. But it's certainly worth listening to and worth checking out, at least kind of giving a cursory, listen at some point, if you're interested in going that far down the rabbit hole. So that is my overview of Parliament Funkadelic. Like I said, I will do detailed reviews at some point, and I have already begun other reviews, so those will be coming soon. I just wanted to kind of get one out there, and hopefully this has been an interesting video, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. Again, please, like and comment and subscribe and all of the other YouTube things, and I will see you very soon in one of the videos that I will complete one of them and put it out, damn it. So anyway, I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon enough. Bye!